Hi! This time I wanted to talk about something that was inspired by a comment made by Chris Donovan. It's related to killing in role playing games, and I also think that this is related to physical and mental damage. That is, Chris Donovan did not take the conversation towards that direction, but I think the killing intent, physical and mental damage are quite related. In fact, as I talk about those things in this video, you will see that I will talk about them almost at the same time, as if they are somewhat linked together, not separately. So I hope that won't get too confusing. First, let's start by reading the comment by Chris. And I apologize in advance if this video gets a bit choppy, because when I read comments, the computer gets a bit stuttery. So, okay. So, Chris Donovan wrote in my video where I talked about combat considerations. This was about a week ago. I'm going to put the link to that video in the description. And he said, "This is a fun topic. As for combat sports versus reality, here's the opinion of someone with 32 years of experience in judo, a couple in MMA, 40 years role-playing, and friendships with people who have been in real combat. I also took one class in fencing. First, there is no substitute for life and death close combat experience. I have not been in that situation. Most people have not, and wouldn't want to be. Even if they have had experience, how many death matches have they had? Not many, I'll bet." Yes, this is very important, because depending on the place where you are living or where you come from, your concept of life and death could be significantly different. If you live somewhere that is somewhat sheltered from these realities, yes, it could be that you are not, it's not a reality for you. The concept of suddenly dying because someone was successful at killing you in using brute force or a weapon or something. Okay, studying a combat sport is about as close as you can get to reality without actually putting someone's life on the line. Martial artists that claim that their experience is more combat valid is just as broken as the sport combatant who is overly confident. Sure, they train to strike lethal areas, but how many times have they actually crippled or killed someone? Yeah, not many. Another point given to me by an instructor who has had street combat experience is that intent to harm is everything. I think this is important, but I will elaborate on that in a few moments. Everybody knows how to gouge an eye given the opportunity, but not everyone has the will to do it. Getting to the point of the video, it is important for a game master to consistently integrate combat game mechanics with story for an optimal experience. I favor gritty combat, but when the system is fuzzy with an abundance of mechanisms designed to keep players alive, I rationalize this with the character's superior skills. Well, yes, I recommend that you watch my video. For those of you that haven't seen that video about combat considerations, that could give you better context. But here, there is something very important that Chris mentions, that this instructor told him that intent to harm is everything. I would agree and disagree at the same time, because intent to harm is important, but there are three things, at least in my opinion and what I have experienced and seen throughout the years, that there are three fundamentals. You could say three bases or perhaps pillars when it comes to combat. And those are, first, you could call it physical conditioning or fitness. Then you would need, let's say, intent to harm, or the killing intent, or the desire to finish off your opponent. And the third one would be technique, the technical aspect. In my opinion, if you lack one of these three elements, you're going to lose against someone who has all three. So, for example, maybe you have the intent to kill, but you don't have the physical conditioning, because there are some thugs that are ready to kill anyone for almost any reason. Even if they get a bit of like a reward, your typical murderous thief or a pickpocket that for some psychotic or background related reason is more than ready to stab someone or kill someone if given the opportunity. But let's say that that person lacks physical conditioning. There could be someone who is terrified of hurting someone else, but because that person has technical expertise, the physical conditioning, that person could be able, let's say in a close quarter situation, if the other person is not armed, because if the thug is armed with a knife, with a gun, yes, that's a huge advantage. But let's say that there is this psychotic guy that just wants to kill you, because you can kill people with your bare hands. There are many vulnerable areas. That's why in combat sports they try to limit those areas when it comes to what is allowed in striking, or the sort of holds and locks and chokes and all of that, because otherwise, well, for on one side it would be very risky for the participants, and on the other side the combats would end too quickly. If you have witnessed, or if you see, that is, if you don't have experience with those situations in real life, you could look for some videos here in YouTube about life or death situations, combat situations in the streets. You will see that most combats, when the opponents know what they are doing, they finish the fight quite quickly, because they either kill the other person or they knock out that knock unconscious, yes, render unconscious. The opponent is rendered unconscious. So I think it is incredibly necessary, very vital, to have those three: the physical conditioning, the intent to kill or harm, and technical expertise when it comes to a life or death situation. If you lack any of those, if you are weak in any of those areas, the opponent is going to capitalize on that. It could be the other way around. You could have the intent to kill, you could have the physical conditioning, but you don't have the know-how, the technique that also could come from experience. You could fall into some traps. It's like that video long ago where there was this boxer that got into a fight with a group of thugs. It's obvious that boxer, well, at least in my opinion, he wasn't going to kill anybody. But he got attacked by 2 or 3 guys at the same time. It was 3 guys. And because he knew exactly where to hit, that is, he was accustomed to being in a sports situation, knew how to knock out the opponent, he managed to knock out his enemies. 3 strikes to the head, if I remember correctly, 2 to the jaw, and the other one he had a difficult time knocking him out, but he got quite rattled, very stunned, because he kept hitting him on the face. So in that case, that boxer had the technique, the physical conditioning, but I don't think that you would say that, oh, that boxer is a murderer or is a killer, he has the killer intent. Who knows, maybe he does have that intent, but that could be an example of someone who is not ready to kill someone else, but is still ready to defend himself. And in that case, if I remember correctly, the thugs were also harassing his girlfriend. So yes, I do believe that it's very important to have the intent to harm, but like saying like intent to harm is everything. If that were the case, take the most psychotic, weak, untrained individual you could think of in a physical confrontation, he would still be at quite a disadvantage. Even if he had all the intention in the world to kill someone, he will be lacking in physical conditioning, in how to actually do it. And someone who is not looking to kill his or her opponent, he will have a somewhat easy time neutralizing that individual. But yes, the killing intent is quite necessary. I will tell you how this plays out in role-playing games in a few moments. I think when it comes to teaching kata or forms in martial arts, they are always taught in a very incomplete sometimes nonsensical way. For those of you that haven't trained martial arts and such, that sometimes there is an error when it comes to understanding these kata or forms. People simply do not know what they are about. You could look at them as an exercise to gain some sort of coordination. If you do all of them at once, without resting, without stop, they also serve as exercise. There are some martial artists with such terrible physical condition that they cannot complete the whole set from white belt to black belt, depending on the system, of course. But they also serve as instruction manuals. They tell you how to carry out or perform the different attacks, the hand strikes, the kicks, the locks, everything. But one thing that they never teach when it comes to katas, they almost never teach. I only discovered this by training in a non-politically correct way. The trick to kata, to prepare you for a confrontation, is that you actually need to visualize and feel the damage that you are causing to an opponent. So if the time comes when you break someone's bone, when you actually hurt someone, you won't be so stunned by the situation. You have already internalized when you are carrying out those moves in kata that this is for, like I said, it's the spear finger directed to the throat or to the eye, or this kick or this fist. If you actually feel as if you're actually hurting someone when the moment comes, then it won't catch you off guard. You will keep flowing with the fight. Now, let's talk about this killing intent in role-playing games. A lot of tabletop role-playing games take a more video game style approach when it comes to fighting. You get attacked by bandits or enemies or whatever, and sometimes you kill them, they give you experience points, and they almost you almost handle those situations. That is, if you handle it a bit more like a video game, you can look for their belongings, getting some treasure, money, or sometimes weapons, etc. So yes, it's kind of like those beat 'em up games, like River City Ransom, barf, when you hit an opponent and that opponent drops coins. A lot of role-playing games handle it like that. But in more realistic role-playing games, for example, maybe you are playing Hackmaster and you get attacked by someone near the city. Maybe it's a thug or a bandit or someone that is just, he doesn't like you and he's going to try to kill you. And you win and you kill your opponent. If a guard or a sort of, it depends, a guard, a constable, a sheriff or whatever, is witness to what has happened, you're going to have to answer a lot of interesting questions about what happened, who was at fault. Maybe he didn't see the start of the fight. Maybe nobody saw the start of the fight, but they saw you leaving the crime scene and they saw this individual bleeding to death. And now you are the suspect and maybe they interrogate you. Why did you do that or this? So it's not that easy sometimes. Now when it comes to death, it also, depending on setting, you should be very careful on how you handle those casualties that you find along the way. So maybe you're playing an adventure, like I said, Hackmaster or any other realistic fantasy role-playing game, and you come upon these corpses. Oh, they are the corpses of those villagers that were going out to sell these sacks of potatoes or whatever, and somebody killed them. And if you just leave them there and you come back and you tell the villagers, oh, well, along the way we found the corpses of those people that disappeared the other day, and they could tell you something like, but why didn't you bring the corpses? You have a wagon, you have horses and a mule. Why didn't you bring them? Did you at least give them proper burial? And you're like, So someone who is just accustomed or used to that video game sort of handling those situations in those realistic role-playing games, they're going to have a very hard time. They could end up in jail. Who is to say that you didn't kill those villagers when they were out to sell their wares? maybe your reputation or your honor will take some damage. So all of that is very important. Now, you could also say, yes, Chris Donovan, again, let me read his comment. Excuse the choppiness of the video. He wrote about something related to this. His comment is taking a long time to load. Well, okay. He mentioned how in some games there could be some additional negative penalties or some sort of punishment if you start to kill everyone just like that. Maybe you take some sort of sanity damage. So some of your stats are affected by that. So I think this is a good way to talk about mental damage related to deaths and killing in role-playing games. When it comes to people feeling very queasy about, or yes, unwilling to take the life of another, that's actually, I would say, a modern construct. And why is that? Let me give you an example. About 7 months, a friend of mine, she wanted to read a bit about history and mythology, specifically Celtic history and mythology. So she said, "Can I borrow? Can you lend me some of your books?" I usually do not lend books to people because sometimes they could end up disappearing. I've never had that experience, but I have heard of some cases of people that suddenly end up with their books missing because they were lending their books to someone else. But she's a really close friend, so I gave her 3 books. And after a few weeks, I got them back, and she said, "Wow, that's there are so many cycles in those books." And I was like, "How is that?" "Well, for example, this guy Cuchulainn, you know, the great Celtic warrior Cuchulainn, he was just walking around, and then he saw this guy, and for no reason whatsoever, he started to attack him, and he killed him on the spot." So I told her, "Well, you need to understand why Cuchulainn did that. The warriors of the Red Branch, they are very territorial. It's their responsibility to protect their land. It's like if someone got into your house, you don't know what that person is going to do to you. It's also a matter of respect. If anyone can enter your territory just like that without receiving some sort of punishment, they are going to lose respect. You won't be respectable. Violence is very important when it comes to protecting yourself. The only reason why you can live a somewhat comfortable life in your home is because if someone gets into your home, if someone tries to kill you or rob you or something even worse, there are going to be severe consequences. And if you are the one who carries out those consequences, they won't get near your house at all because they don't know if they will come back out of your house. Depending on the place, this could be more obvious. For example, let's say that in some area, the police are quite corrupt, and this is quite usual in certain places. So when a bad guy gets into your house to do anything, any crime that you can imagine, if you tell the police in those places, like I said, maybe it's not everywhere, but in certain places of the world, if you tell police, you run the risk that the police are actually in cahoots with that criminal or with a group of criminals. Sometimes people witness a crime and then the police arrive to take information. "Oh, did you see anything? Tell us about this crime." But they're actually looking for witnesses to eliminate those witnesses, depending on, like I said, the place, the criminal group involved. So some people actually, when their house is invaded, sometimes they do what must be done, and they never inform authorities because they are afraid that they are in on the situation, on the crime that is happening. So in the case of Cuchulainn, the warriors of the Red Branch, They saw their home, their land, as a sacred place. If you want to enter that place, you need to ask permission. There are diplomatic meetings, and that's one of many examples that happened in the time of great heroes. You could enter someone else's land as long as you asked for a hearing that I am here and I wish to enter the land to meet up with this person. Usually they would escort you because at that time there was the theft of cattle raids. And even in recent times, those things still happen. Some of you will probably remember my story when I did that video for October. I don't remember if it was from last year or a couple of years back that I told you about that situation where these cattle thieves went into a certain place, took the cattle, and one guy thought about going into their territory, trying to recover that cattle, and he actually ended up stuck in that place. I'm going to put the link in the description if you want to know more details about that video. And he almost didn't make it out alive. So yes, it's a very serious situation when you are invading someone else's property. And you could say, well, but this warrior could have just beat the living daylights or knocked out this other warrior. But this was a match between trained warriors. You do not underestimate the skills of an opponent. So in that context, in those stories about those historical and mythological warriors, it's not that they are complete psychopaths. They are protecting their land in many cases, and they are not underestimating what their opponent can actually do to them. So when it comes to people suffering, for example, in role-playing games, they suffer damage to their sanity or something like that because they killed this enemy. I think it only applies in settings that have very strict codes or some sort of dogma or doctrine related to taking a life. It's like in the Wild West, the Old West, the great hero, I would say, Wild Bill. He said that killing a bad person was just like killing a rat. Sometimes people forget that we are also animals. We are still animals, but the acts of killing of these animals happen on a larger scale usually. For example, in wars that are very profitable. That's why wars happen. They reduce the population and they are great business opportunities. Just like one of the Rothschilds said during World War One, he had like this Freudian slip. It was actually published in a newspaper, and that's where, whoops, they showed their true colors, their true intention, the color red. So yes, I think it only applies to certain settings. If you are playing the typical Dungeons and Dragons game, killing those agents of the Centarim or the Red Wizards of Thay, the character is not going to end up traumatized. Those warriors, the wizards, the thieves, the clerics, they are great men in most situations when it comes to the way that they handle mental damage. They won't end up committing suicide or something because they killed an agent of the Centarim or the Red Wizards of Thay. So it truly depends on the setting. For example, if you play a Lovecraftian game and you see these characters fainting and passing out by witnessing all sorts of things that man was not meant to know, that's because they got encased into this very, like a safe space of sorts, where everybody is civilized and the government is good and everyone is not giving out misinformation related to your well-being and health. So it's like a fantasy land for kidults. And the characters got encased into that and trapped into that fantasy. So when they encounter anything related to death, cults, something sexual perhaps, they end up traumatized because they never matured. I think in current times there are many kidults. They, it's like a part of them remained at kiddie level, like a kid. They could end up having a family, driving a car to work, having a big house, whatever. But in that regard, they are still children. And that's when some horrible things happen, when they get caught off guard. They are not ready for it. They are going to enter this state of shock if they didn't experience the more raw aspects of life. They will have no chance when a moment of great intensity happens. Now let's talk about a bit. Let's talk about sorry, physical damage. A lot of people ignore that when it comes to health, fitness, and being able to withstand punishment, it's very much related to the mental and the spiritual self as well. In fact, I would say that a martial artist that focuses on keeping himself alive through all situations should always find that just that center that should exercise the spiritual self, meditation. And why is that? There are so many misconceptions about meditation and some very laughable, yes, misinformation that is planted by people that, well, if you take a look at many people that talk against meditation, you will see that all of those people are constantly depressed and they have this gloominess to them. They have terrible health. Not all of them, but most of them, they are like that. And that's because they didn't actually properly meditate. There are some very intense meditation works. A lot of you know that I have completed the meditation known as sun gazing. Some others of you know that I've practiced Wim Hof, the Wim Hof method, which is actually a modified version of different meditation techniques from the East. From Tibet, he has like this. I would say that he combines the fire breathing in a very controlled and accessible way for people. If you don't know about the Wim Hof method, it's actually free. You can find how to do it here in YouTube. There are many videos, so many videos about it. And because of that, I think I am going to, how would you say, complete, or I have spent 12 years without taking a hot shower. All of my showers are completely cold, even in winter. The body has adjusted to that. And when it comes to sun gazing, well, a lot of you will find that very impossible to believe the benefits of sun gazing. So I uploaded a video talking about sun gazing. I will leave that in the, if you want to look for it, you can use the little magnifying glass in my channel. Just type how to praise the sun in real life. So you could say that someone who practices those meditations, those methods, you have a greater capacity to withstand sickness, pain, all sorts of bad things that can affect you. So that's the true meditation. And that's why I would say that in role-playing games, the classes that specialize in fighting the fighter, barbarian, monk, they have found that center. And why is that? A lot of people think that meditating is kind of like falling asleep. It's not that. Meditation allows you to, well, there are so many things about it, but concerning pain, it promotes the regeneration of your body, but it also allows you to apply some sort of tranquilizer to the area that is in pain. So, as someone who is a fighting man, if you meditate to attain that immediate sense of tranquility, when you take a blow, and someone hits you, kicks you, strikes you, or whatever, you will be able to keep on fighting. You will be able to keep on going because you already have that mental capacity to, oh, my arm, I can't tolerate or withstand this pain in my arm, and you suddenly like just like tranquilize, or it's like you apply some sort of anesthesia to your anesthesia to your arm, and you can keep on going. And you also relax the arm, make the arm quite, it's not tense or rigid, so therefore the blood flows quite easily. And that's the thing about when you use the Wim Hof method or other intense meditation methods or sun gazing, you enter that sense of incredible warmth. It's like a warmth. That would explain why you can withstand the cold water, because you have like this inner flame. You know that feeling like the when you fall in love and you feel like warm and fuzzy inside. You could be in the most horrible situations during a fight, and you feel so warm and fuzzy inside, and suddenly your arm doesn't hurt anymore, and you can move again. It's that control. If you haven't achieved that, then you have no idea what meditation is about. It's a thing that takes a lifetime to master. So when it comes to physical pain in role-playing games, some people, or damage rather, some people could be thinking, well, those role-playing games are quite fictional, unrealistic, that you only need to rest for a day or two, and suddenly you obtain all of these hit points and all of that. Although we already know that hit points are more like an abstract measure of physical conditioning, luck, your experience on avoiding those lethal blows. But there are some people that, because they carry out that more healthier lifestyle, they regenerate quite quickly. And there are those that rely so much on things that are harmful for the body, for them to obtain what they think is true strength, that eventually that will fail. You know, the typical mixed martial artist, all of those guys take substances. So when they clash, they kick at the same time when their opponent is kicking, or they strike at the same time, they end up with broken arms and legs because their body simply cannot take it anymore. There is a reason why your body is telling you that you cannot keep on going, that, oh, you're too tired, if you keep on going you're going to hurt yourself. That's your body warning you of your limits. Either that, or when you are more experienced, it's the body warning you that you need to, like I said, obtain a greater sense of tranquility so that you can keep on raging. So I think depending on the setting, on the time and context of the role-playing game, when it comes to recovering from injuries, yes, it's very much it depends on the methods of healing and of those role-playing games. In general, when it comes to mythological and yes, historical role-playing games, but way beyond in times of, let's say, ancient Greece and all of that, I think they would have a superior metabolism, a superior physique, and they would recover quite quickly. Just read about Socrates, the great philosopher Socrates. Well, some people don't like him too much. I'm still undecided, but if we go to what has been communicated about him in history, he used to be barefoot all the time, like when you are doing the Wim Hof method or sun gazing, he was constantly barefoot, even when it was really cold, and he was an incredible fighter. If I remember correctly, Leonidas from, the 300, the Spartans and all of that, I remember reading once that he either had 50 years old or 60 years old when he was fighting. Just imagine right now, there are people that are quite older than me. Just imagine fighting non-stop when you are 50 or 60 years old. That's amazing, incredible physique. And you can notice that as the settings go, you go into the future, to more dystopian settings, anything related to cyberpunk or some sci-fi settings, because they put so many poisonous things into your body, with something that starts with farm. I want to keep this video from being shadow banned, but let's say that you go to the pharmacy to buy certain things, those pharmaceuticals, Yes, people who take those things. By the way, if this video gets taken down, remember that I have a backup channel in Odysee. So people who takes those things, they end up deteriorating quite fast later on. While someone who enjoys a more natural lifestyle, yes, everything organic, not eating things from bags like bread that you purchase from a vending machine, all of that, that's so gross, or those drinks that have all of those poisonous sugars. If you keep a more natural lifestyle, because there are natural alternatives, you can make your own bread. I always make my own bread, and you have those substitutes for sugar. No, you should take honey or fruit or stevia. There are some places, I don't know if the ban is still up, but the European Union has banned the use of stevia, which is so good for your blood pressure, and it's so sweet. It's like, how much? If I remember correctly, was it 150% more sweetness than sugar, but it does not affect your body. It's great for diabetes because you are not affected by that. And stevia is incredibly healthy. And now, if you look at those people that, oh, that person lived to an age of 90 years old or 80 years old and still physically fit and quite strong and vigorous, and there are younger people that lose their breath and they end up sick all the time because they live in the cities and they are not in this little fishing village or in that humble town. Those people live for a long time, very healthy, because everything that they take, including medicines and food, it's all natural. So it also depends on the setting. In a cyberpunk sci-fi setting, they usually give you these miraculous pharmaceuticals, but that's only in science fiction or fantasy. In the long term, they are going to destroy you. But when it comes to a more natural setting, or perhaps it could be a sci-fi setting that has achieved a balance between the urban and the rural. That's what I like of certain settings, like, well, Star Wars, when it was good, you always saw these cities that combine like the nature, forests and trees and grass, but you also had like those streets and some buildings, not in all situations, but there were some places like that. So I think it's all about that balance. If you are playing that sci-fi setting where there is a balance between nature and civilization. I actually talked a bit about this with one of my viewers, Midnight Green. I was telling him like, maybe one day I should talk about the advantages of civilization and yes, the more natural side of things. I think civilization offers many advantages, but there is an obsession to remove the more natural side of life. You have these cities that everything is concrete because a lot of companies profit from that. They want to put concrete everywhere and wires everywhere. It looks horrible. It looks like the role-playing game Werewolf the Apocalypse, the Weaver, you know, that spider type of entity that used to like create spider webs out of cities. Looks horrifying. So in those settings, yes, I think regeneration in role-playing games, if you rest for a day or two, it should take longer because you are not obtaining the same benefits from the sun, the water, natural food, natural medicine. And maybe some of you could be thinking, well, I don't think that's true. You don't need to believe me, and you don't need to believe the stats or the mainstream media. Just use the scientific method. Take a look at those people that promote all of those bad things. That, oh, you should put this into your body, or oh, meditation doesn't work, and oh, you should take all of these pills. And take a look at how healthy they are. They need glasses. They age really fast. Their hair turns almost completely white almost immediately. They have all sorts of pimples. A lot of them have these huge beards to cover their faces because they have so many like pimples and rashes and discolorations. They have problems with depression, with yeah, so many mental and physical problems. They are usually always dying from some sort of chronic illness. Oh, I want to. I see those guys, and I see them here in YouTube. Sometimes they put them in their community tab or in their videos like, oh, I remember, oh, I got sick again. I have allergies. Where do you think the allergies come from? Oh, I have this and that, and oh, went to the hospital. Oh, but remember to take this. It's hilarious. It's clown world. It's ridiculous. In fact, when it comes to depression, I think a lot of people that are depressed is because they have that unfulfilled desire of releasing violence. They see so many bad things happening in the world, and they are always held back. And if you don't find an intelligent way to fight back, that violence is going to consume you, because that violence is asking you to release it in some way. So you need to identify what you think is evil and take action. That's all up to you. I am not suggesting anything specific, but a lot of people that are depressed is because that they have this, like I said, an unfulfilled desire. Throughout the years, the governments, religions, the corrupt corporations, different intelligence agencies, they always point out to rock and roll and video games and sometimes movies. They are the source of all evil. Role-playing games, the Christian panic, they always call it the satanic panic, but it was the Christians that were actually carrying out that panic, or causing it or promoting it. So that's because it serves like a scapegoat, a decoy, a way to distract people. If they don't want people to notice that many of the psychological problems that they are suffering are because of the religions, the government, the schools, the institutions, the toxic things that you put into your body, the terrifying processed food that has so many toxic chemicals, or something even things even more nefarious. If you want to look for the truth about those things, I definitely recommend that you check out Odysee. It's not as censored as YouTube. YouTube takes all of those videos down, those videos that get too specific, because YouTube is always going to favor corporations, not the lives of people. So I recommend that you check out Odysee. If you have questions about anything related to food, medicine, definitely check out Odysee, and you're going to find some very interesting videos. I highly recommend that you check out information about this current thing, the greatest scam that is happening, probably the greatest scam in the history of the world. I'm going to put a link in the description to a very interesting video. This has been happening for a while, but all of those people that say, oh, take this so that you don't, they are the ones who are constantly in poor health. They're dying and suffering, and they want you to put this inside of your body, that poison. That's pretty insane. So when it comes to role-playing games, it's all a matter of context. If it's a realistic game that is set in an Earth very similar to our real life, when it comes to regeneration of damage, the character is going to take more time regenerating those hit points or health levels and all of that. Mental damage is almost always related to education, to religion. When it comes to fighting and the killing intent and all of that, a lot of people do not follow that natural instinct when it comes to defending themselves, because they feel that tug that, oh, that religion told you that killing is bad, so don't do it. Even if your life is at risk, don't do it. Put the other cheek. Or maybe they say something like, oh, if you do that, you're going to jail. You are going to jail. Even if you need to protect your life, don't do it. So a lot of people, yes, they cannot develop that killing intent. And in role-playing games, depending on how totalitarian the system of control is, there could be some consequences to finishing off different enemies. Some of you may remember that in another video I said that I was actually going to talk about this in a future video. You know, I have my solo adventurer series of videos. So in my next video I am going to talk about he's basically one of my favorite comic book characters of all time. And the setting is very dystopian. Maybe some of you will probably guess who that guy is because I have talked about that character. But I think that video was going to be too unfocused and it was going to take too long if I were to combine it with these topics that I talked about today. So that's why I separated this video from that one. But if you want to know more about, yes, why I like that comic book character and how I relate the things in that comic book to real life, definitely watch that video. Remember, it's the solo adventurer series. Well, thank you, Chris, for your comment. It was very inspirational for this video. I hope I provided some things that linked the reality of certain situations to the fictional environment of role-playing games and how you can handle that in your sessions. So once again, thank you for watching this video. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending drive-thru RPG gift certificates. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And those that want to further support the channel, all the information on how to do that will be in the description below. So once again, thank you and see you later.